Thank you for joining my session. I'm registered psychotherapist qualified in Ontario, and today we are discussing about managing anxiety if you are a migrant or you have just arrived to a new culture, or maybe you are coming from multicultural background and you have multicultural marriage, or maybe you are just trying to adapt to a new environment where the majority of population is different from your culture, or maybe you just feel that you are holding multiple identities. So if this is the case for you, there can be certain challenges, anxiety arising because of it, or you might experience intense feelings. Maybe sometimes it can be difficult for you to understand yourself. You might be uh, feeling when somebody is criticizing you or giving you a feedback. You might experience it differently, and if you are experiencing any of these challenges here, what you can do about it using different approaches: acceptance commitment therapy, solution focused brief therapy, and utilizing their approaches. I'm registered psychotherapist qualified in Ontario, and I'm working with people who've been in accidents, newcomers, immigrants, and people who are trying to succeed and achieve a lot of things when mm, when working under stress, such as students, academicians, doctors, athletes, and anyone who just wants to succeed in the presence of uncomfortable feelings, thoughts, and stress. So our conversation is one I have wanted to have for a long time, and it's for a group of people whose particular psychological experience is very rarely named and with any facility. So if we are, for instance, having any difficulties with these topics that I have mentioned, sometimes it can be difficult to understand your own feelings or to tell about them to other people, because they would accept it as insignificant, and maybe it can be compared with what others have experienced, such as for instance, maybe you can be comparing yourself to your parents who have came to this country or any other country, and they have experienced much more difficulties. So comparing with their difficulties with yours, like maybe you feel hesitant about sharing your feelings because they will not be accepted as important, and maybe you will be criticized. And also you may be experiencing feelings of guilt that your parents have provided a good future for you, and you are having a lot more opportunities than your parents had. And also these feelings of guilt might be holding you back and visiting you from time to time. And sometimes I'm even noticing that these feelings of guilt, not being able to repay their debt, can be also contributing to distress. So today we will be discussing about research on these topics and what can be done if you are experiencing anything familiar with this. And you can be grateful for what your family sacrificed and still be tired, and you can love your parents and still feel pressure. You can appreciate opportunities they have provided for you and still wish your life contained less responsibility. And you can be successful and can still struggle, and perhaps most importantly, your family's suffering doesn't create an obligation for you to suffer too. And sometimes people who grew up with enormous family sacrifice develop a different rule. Because they worked so hard for me, I have to make their sacrifice worth it. And that rule can quietly turn achievement into pressure. And like somewhere in subconscious, not even being aware of it, and you can experiencing these challenges. And so rather than asking, how do I get rid of this guilt, you can try asking, what does this guilt tell us about the kind of person you want to be? So if initially you are understanding it as a guilt and as a pressure, if you dig deeper into it, you will find that you have love, connection, willingness to contribute, to connect and pay back what your parents have granted for you. And actually you can turn it into resource for you to develop new skills, to cope with challenges, to improve your health, and it can be used as a motivation, inspiration. So depending from where you are looking to it and how you are considering these feelings, and whether you are understanding yourself better or not, your behavior can change, and you can develop better, like more different perspectives and ways of supporting yourself. Because underneath the guilt, there may be love, there may be gratitude, responsibility, and there may be profound desire to make your family proud. So, uh, depending on the stance and thoughts that you have about these feelings and about this situation, uh, you can turn it into a resource, into something that is driving you for action, and this can be useful for you. And those are not problems that need to be removed. The question is, how can we keep the love without keeping the burden? And rather than beginning by asking someone to describe everything that's wrong, uh, we can try to ask ourselves, you have worked incredibly hard to get where you are. And if our conversation, if this session today for you was useful, what would you hope to take away from it? What would you like to change as a result of listening to me? And maybe you would say, I want to stop feeling guilty. I want to take action. Instead of immediately working on guilt, I can ask, and if this guilt became less powerful, what would you be doing differently? What would you be feeling differently? So maybe you would find out for yourself that you would be feeling love, you would feeling connection, and it can helping you to cope with challenges at your work, at your career, at your studies, and you would start to enjoy your success, your career, your achievements more. And what would you be enjoying about your success, and how it would look like? How would your interactions with parents, with people whom you care, would change? How would the way you relate to your work, to your studies would change? And sometimes people are noticing that if before they felt pressured that they had to do certain things, then they start to realize that they are the ones who are choosing to act such a way, who are choosing to take efforts, and this time it stops being a burden, and it turns into love, into something that motivates them, that helps them to keep going. And what would your family notice about you, for instance, on the day when you stopped feeling guilty and when you started feeling connection and you started taking steps towards the person whom you want to be? And now we are turning slowly towards the version of a person whom they want to be. And if this conversation helped, what started to be different? What would become a little easier? Maybe the way you start studying, maybe the way you are working, maybe the way you are communicating with people. If, for instance, anxiety wasn't there about whether being understood or misunderstood or criticized, what would be there instead in your interactions with your parents? What would you like to experience instead of constantly feeling responsible or guilty? What would you like your relationship with achievement to look like? What would you want your family to see in you? And what would that mean for you? And what difference would it mean for you? And how would you like to carry your family story? If you were able to continue this story the way you desire, how it might look like. And researchers studying first-generation students have found a phenomenon that is called family achievement guilt. Distress that arises from opportunities that family members didn't have, from the sense of separation that education, professional success can create from the people who made it possible. And it might show up in specific and often confusing ways. First of all, there can be guilt about comfort and having these opportunities, and about the ease of your working life compared to your parents' physical labor. There can be guilt about distance, whether it's geographic, cultural, linguistic, or simply the distance of a life they cannot fully picture. And what makes this difficult is that it can coexist with genuine gratitude and love. John Barry's work on acculturation have found that many people find immediately clarify. He described 4 strategies people use when dealing with cultural assimilation, where original culture is set aside, separation where the new culture is held at a distance, and marginalization where neither is fully held, and integration where both are maintained, which is the most healthiest one. And the research consistently found that integration is associated with the best psychological outcomes. like it's most helpful for your mental health. Whereas marginalization with the West. But integration requires something that is effortful, sustaining two cultural identities simultaneously, often with different expectations, different norms about family obligation, different beliefs about individual versus collective priority, and that effort is invisible to colleagues or to people who are coming just from one culture. And the person who behaves one way at work and another way at their home is not being inauthentic, they are doing sustained cognitive and emotional labor that monocultural colleagues simply do not have to do. And this might be really exhausting, especially if you are having critiques from outside, from different people, like that you are being inauthentic. And it can be also seen in 3 or 4 cultures. For instance, sometimes people are coming to North America from cultures where they already were speaking 2 languages, such as Arabic and French, for instance. And when they come here, they learning different languages and being exposed to different cultures. Therefore, it's quite common to experience these challenges, and this doesn't mean that the person is inauthentic. This actually shows their ability to connect with differences, different views, and it actually makes them to be more empathetic towards other people, to connect better, to understand them better. Gregory Walton and Jeffrey Cohen's research introduced a concept that I found really useful clinically, that is called belonging uncertainty. It's a persistent question of whether you truly belong in an environment which makes ordinary setbacks carry extra weight. For someone without belonging uncertainty, a piece of critical feedback, for instance, might be just a feedback. But for someone with it, the same feedback becomes potential evidence for a much larger and more frightening conclusion and confusion, perhaps. And they were right to doubt because this event is identical. The psychological weight is completely different. And what Walton and Cohen also demonstrated is interesting. Brief interventions that normalize belonging uncertainty, simply showing students that doubting your belonging is common and tends to fade with time, was produced measurable improvements in outcomes and helped them to calm down and to be more successful in their careers, in their studies. And sometimes just knowing that an experience is common and temporary itself can become an intervention. So if you have anyone who can genuinely understand you, with whom you can connect, it can also feeling heard, feeling understood can become itself an intervention itself. And when the feedback or critiques are received, sometimes apart from receiving just the feedback, it can trigger an internal conflict. If you are already having clash of cultures, clash of identities, this can lead to internal conflict, internal clash of differences, and that's probably what is disturbing the people. But normalizing it, being compassionate towards yourself, and understanding that different identities, different views can coexist together is one of the first steps towards feeling better and healing. For instance, in solution-focused grief therapy, we are talking about different versions of ourselves, and when a person is coming from multicultural background, maybe like there is also a proverb in Turkish culture that a person, like if you know one language, for instance, one culture, you have one personality. If you know a second language, you have 2 personalities. So if you consider, if you look at yourself from that perspective and different versions of you, like sometimes certain versions can show up more often than the others, and this doesn't mean that there is any conflict or that this is not normal. So this can be just a process, understanding yourself, adapting to culture, and understanding who do you want to be, how do you want to continue, how do you want to show up in the face of this uncertainty or clash of identities. And there is one more layer, and it's one of most often brings people into my office. In many immigrant families, traveling is not spoken about, and parents' generation survived things that make current difficulties seem small by comparison. And there is often explicit or implicit messages such as, we didn't have the luxury of feeling this way, or you shouldn't either. And the result is a young professional experiencing genuine anxiety or depression who cannot name it to their family, who might hear it as ingratitude or to themselves, because they have internalized the belief that their difficulties is not legitimate given what they have been given. And your parents' hardship doesn't disqualify your suffering. Pain is not a competition, and there is no threshold of comparative severity you must cross before you are permitted to need help. And acceptance commitment therapy offers a distinction here that many people find freeing. There is a difference between honoring your family's sacrifice, which is a value chosen and personally meaningful, and performing repayment of debt, which is an obligation that can never be discharged, of course. And the values version sounds like, I value building a life that makes meaning of what my parents did. That value can be expressed in many ways, including in a career they didn't choose for you, and including on days when you are struggling. And the debt version sounds like, I must achieve at this level of the sacrifice that was wasted. And that this framing has no end point. So therefore, depending on how do you consider the situation and how do you use these feelings, your situation and the way you are approaching the situation might change. And if when you are using the guilt, you are setting goals. When you are using the perspective of love, contribution, and connection to your parents, then you are choosing your values and creating new goals aligning with your values, which doesn't create pressure, but on the contrary helps you to take steps towards the version that you want to become. Therefore, noticing your thoughts about this confusion or these challenges or feelings is the first step. Noticing your feelings, your thoughts, understanding yourself, and then asking yourself, who do you want to be, how do you want to respond, what are certain steps you can take in the direction who you want to be. And moving from debt to values doesn't reduce your commitment to your family. In my experience, it usually deepens it. And because the connection becomes something you are choosing rather than something you are servicing. And noticing the thoughts that you have about this confusion or problems is also important. And it means not arguing with the thought, but arguing, because arguing rarely works, and because the thought contains something true about your parents' history. Instead, telling yourself, I'm noticing the thought that I have no right to struggle, and so that way it becomes something your mind is producing rather than a verdict about what you are permitted to feel. And then the question that actually moves things forward is, given that this thought is here, and given what I genuinely value, what's the next useful thing I can do? And sometimes that is resting, sometimes it's asking for help. Both are compatible with deep respect for what your family have given you. And one of most consistently helpful strategies for first-generation professionals is finding others with similar experiences, not for advice, but for specific relief of not having to explain. There is a particular exhaustion in trying to explain, translate your context every time you want to talk about your life, why you sent money home. You cannot simply set a boundary with your parents the way in American colleagues might suggest. So why the career change feels impossible, even though everyone tells you it is your life, with someone who shares the context. None of that requires explanation, and the reduction in cognitive load alone is sufficient and significant. So one of strategies you can try to help yourself is writing down sentences you care about your family, your achievement, and the one that runs underneath. And it's often something like, I have to succeed at the level of sacrifice means nothing. Now write a values version. I value building a life that makes meaning of what they gave me, and that value is expressed in how I live, not only in what I achieve. And keep both versions. Notice which one you are operating from during a difficult week, and deliberately return to the second one. It can also help you to remember about love, connection, from where you want to take your inspiration and act. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. If you want to learn more about these strategies, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications, and see you in the next videos again.